But you didn't want to say anything.
Yeah, I do want to say something.
Okay, go ahead.
I want to pick up on everyday ego chatter level into connecting with the one consciousness, which the bowl in the center represents in our shrine, to open ourselves to a deeper conversation, which is going both directions. We contribute to it, but we also bring in from it to contribute to the conversation. And the deep listening is so important. We have a little saying that we have used in our New Song councils for 45 years, which says, speak to the question and listen with the ears of your heart to the other voices of yourself speaking, which automatically affirms us in our oneness in the field of consciousness. Listen with the ears of your heart to the other voices of yourself speaking. So I just wanted to, and that implies empathy, does it not? That is a way of talking about empathy. If you're listening with the ears of your heart, you can hear another person from their point of view. That is of the essence of the deep listening. So it's part of our skills in the art of dialogue, and I just wanted to enhance that because I think that's such a great statement. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Okay. I want to begin with a prayer. I'm going to stand if you want to stand with me. That's fine. Thank you. Oh, beloved Creator, thank you for this day. Thank you for this blessing of being able to convene a dialogue circle for the Institute of Noetic Sciences in Taos. Thank you for the gift of being alive. Thank you for the light, air, water, earth. Thank you for the starlight, the sunlight, the light within our solar plexus, the light of consciousness that penetrates all things, that illuminates all things, that gives inspiration to us, that gives us energy, gives us charge. Thank you for the air, the breathing aware air, the prana, the pneuma, the ruach that breathes through us, the one air that is us and the world air, that is shared air. Thank you for the aware air. Thank you for that beautiful breathing, alive air. And thank you for the waters above the sky and space in our atmosphere, under the ground, and the rivers, streams, lakes, and oceans. And most of all, the water in our heart. The water in our heart that connects us to other beings, that connects us to the heart of nature. Thank you for that. Thank you for the water that's within life, that creates life, that is life. Thank you for water. Thank you for water. And thank you for Pachamama, Mother Earth, that we're born from, that we return to, the ever-present regeneration of this Mother Earth. And thank you for all the critters on Mother Earth. Thank you for the earthworm. Thank you for that earthworm that has no eyes, but it can see, and has no ears, but it can hear. Thank you for all the fungi. Thank you for all the bacteria. Thank you for all the bacteria that is life. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. We know that we don't respect you enough. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the soaring ones, the birds of prey, the eagles, hawks. Thank you for that. Thank you, eagles and hawks, that give us vision. Thank you for the little birds that come and sing to us in the morning, the finches and jays. Thank you for that. Thank you for all the four-leggeds, the bear, the fox, the bobcat, especially the bear now as we come to the season of introspection. Thank you, bear, for teaching us about wisdom, for teaching us about going within, for teaching us about accessing a higher knowing. Thank you for that, bear. Thank you for the finned ones. May their waters be clean again. Thank you, finned ones. May the plastic be removed from your waters. Thank you, finned ones. We care for you. Thank you. Thank you, all the beings. Thank you for the ancestors. Most of all, thank you for the ancestors and for everything that has happened to bring us to this moment in time. Thank you, dear ancestor Howard McConaughey. Thank you, grandfather Tobasanakwa Canoe. Thank you, grandfather Kento Gormley. Thank you, grandfather Leon Secatero. Thank you, grandfather Dan Moonhawk Alford. Thank you, grandfather Edgar Mitchell. Thank you, grandmother Paula Gunn Allen. Thank you, grandmother Patricia Clark Smith. Thank you, grandmother Angela Sarian. Thank you, grandmother Ruth Inga Hines. Thank you to all the grandmothers and grandfathers of all of you that have come here today. Thank you for the ancestors of the animals. My own ancestor, animals. Thank you, Satchmo, Adobe, Jingles, Lobo, Pod, Fuyu, Tumble, Seymour, Skippy the cat. Thank you for all your animal ancestors. Thank you for the plant ancestors. Thank you for the tree ancestors. And thank you for most of all, for all the elements and all the ancestors, all their energy that is here always. Thank you for the water that is one water that holds the memory of everything that has happened before us. Thank you for that. Connect with that. We ask you to help us today. We ask you to help us to connect to your ancestral energy, the wise energy that remains, that is always here. We ask for guidance. We ask that we speak through ourselves, not in our personal ego. We ask that we speak through the wisdom that is here vibrating on this planet at all times. Thank you. Aho Mitakios.
Aho.
Thank you. As my friend Mike Two Bears says, we could say a prayer that's just simply the words, thank you. So, is that a blessing that prayer is said? And that's the intention for this dialogue. We're going to be talking about a subject that is challenging in some ways. But I want you to bear in mind that beyond that, there is a blessing. There's a blessing of whatever manifests in whatever form on this planet at this time. A few brief words about dialogue. Elizabeth already went to the heart of dialogue. Thank you. Thank you. Listening with your heart. Thank you. Listening even while you're speaking. The most important thing about dialogue is listening. If some of you were here last month or in May, this may be a review. For some that are coming new, I'll cover it again. The very word dialogue is misunderstood. It means so many things in the society. If you open up a screenplay, they say the dialogue is the words that are spoken. Well, that's one meaning of dialogue. Some people think that a dialogue is a conversation between two people, but the real meaning of dialogue isn't that, actually, because dia is the Greek meaning through, so the word is constructed of through logos, or log. So the logos is often translated as the word, but for our purposes it means the flow of meaning. So it's what is flowing through the group, and that's why we leave an opening to the east. So that's one of the most important things about dialogue. Dialogue has no agenda. no expectation of a result. We're not going to start a committee afterwards to, or organize a phone tree to call people or something. That's not the kind of dialogue we're going to do today. There's a place for that, but that's not this. So what we're doing is more on the subtle realm, and hopefully what resonates through will dream through you, will be given birth in a painting or a vision or what have you over time. So thank you very much for that. One of the most important things, and I have this almost a little treasure trove of all the things that came out of my pocket almost over here, but I do that because just symbolically I'm emptying my tacit infrastructure. That's what David Bohm and Leroy Littlebear, who's my mentor into dialogue, refer to as your set of beliefs, assumptions, your upbringing, maybe your religion, maybe your gender, maybe where you were born, where you were raised, the East Coast, West Coast, in another country, in an island like Hawaii or something that's fed by the sea, or maybe you were born near a river, maybe you were born in the desert far from water. And whatever it is, those sets of beliefs, assumptions that you carry around with us, what Carlos Castaneda called your controlled folly, that's what I'm asking you to set aside. Set aside you may want to take off your shoes, make yourself comfortable, something to make yourself aware that you're setting aside the normal way that you walk through the world and the way you are perceived. Now, this is a very hard thing to do, and it's easier said than done. At the same time, to the extent that we can set aside our tacit infrastructure and allow Spirit to move through us, the closer we will get to where we want to be, which is really becoming of one mind. Becoming of one mind. And you'll know where it's working, you'll know it's cooking when you hear somebody else opening up their mouth. You think you're thinking something, and somebody else is opening up their mouth, and they are saying it. That's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful thing. So, okay. And it doesn't mean that you're giving up of yourself. It just means that when you set aside all your tacit infrastructure, some people worry, who am I then? Who am I if I don't have this, this PhD or this whatever it is that you have, all your life experiences? Well, an amazing thing can happen if you set that aside. Maybe something else incredibly precious, original, comes through. And that's beautiful. And that becomes who you are in that moment. So it's a beautiful thing. Okay, I want to just set up the question a little bit, and also remind, for those that weren't here last time, we ended in a very interesting place last time. We had a very beautiful dialogue, which to some extent this is a continuation of. We spoke a month ago about the politics of gender relations, which is a very generative concept. So the very word gender comes from gen, which is related to generist, which is related to generative, which is related to genitals, which is related to a lot of things that are generative. So that's why it was a very generative discussion, no doubt. But we concluded possibly, or at least I recall, that I offered to people that what Ramana Maharshi said when he was asked, how should we treat others? And he replied, there are no others. This is kind of a starting point where I want to start with today, which is as beautiful as it can be. And as bizarre an election of 2016 as it has been, I would say to all of us that both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump are, to some extent, part of us. We are part of them. You know, so some people are more or less comfortable with that idea, but I'm putting that out there. I believe that is true. And I want to share with you a dream I had about Donald Trump 15 months ago. And this was at the time when people weren't taking him really seriously. They didn't think he could be a potential nominee of the Republican Party. I dreamed that Trump was a window washer. And he was on scaffolding in a New York City skyscraper, and he was only 3 stories from the top. And the scaffolding was going up. But then Trump looks down. And he sees the city way, way below him, and he becomes frightened. He passes out with his head on the scaffolding facing down. And his crew that is with him are very concerned. They are concerned about the Donald because they think if we wake him with his head facing down, he's going to have a heart attack and die. So they finally decide what we need to do is lower the scaffolding very slowly down to the floor. Okay, and that's the dream. So, you know, I want you to imagine. Here's your question. I want you to imagine that you are the window washer. Okay? And I want you to tell us, how has this election, how has this candidacy of Trump and Clinton, how has that shown you more clearly who we are as a nation? And I want to put a corollary question here, too. I want to ask you, how has it shown you something about yourself? So, you as the window washer, how has this election shown you more clearly something about our nation? And how has it shown you something more clearly about yourself? And Linda, we have till when?
Well, we have till 1 o'clock.
Okay, so I'm going to put this out popcorn style this time. Last month we went around the circle, but I'm going to put this out popcorn style. And when you ask for the staff, you can let yourself, let me know that you want to speak at some point. But remember, the most important thing is listening. So it's not a good idea to be sitting here thinking about what we're going to say. As Elizabeth told us, it's much more important to be listening to what is being said and trust that something will come to you at the right time. And when you do have the talking staff, remember, silence is golden. So allow yourself time to collect your thoughts, and that will be just beautiful. We say collect your thoughts. They're really not your thoughts, but collect thoughts. so that allow them to pass through. Okay, blessings. So you are the window washer. Imagine that. How has being the window washer shown you more clearly something about the United States as a nation? And how has it shown you more clearly something about yourself? That's the question. Who would like to address it? Like to address. Okay. Excellent. Thank you.
Normally, I'm very apolitical, and this year I got sucked into the debates, first presidential debates at Taos, and been following it since. I like to tell people, to me, this presidential election, as the window washer, I see Trump's obviously a shadow figure for male, to me. But I see Hillary Clinton as a shadow figure for female because she's more the image of the masculine ideal. I'm very optimistic about what's going on. I'm going to let Trump go on down and see what happens. I think that what will happen, is we'll see more parties coming up. I think that this election is showing the problems of Trump being nominated by the Republicans. A lot of people are saying, no, I don't want that. So for me, I see the two-party system maybe growing into other parties. I think also, the GOP, Republicans, are going to be rethinking how do we do things, even the Democrats. I think there's going to be actually a renaissance, an enlightenment of election in our process. The spiritual man, speaker Matt Kahn, says that this is a great election. It's going to be interesting. I mean, I don't support either candidate, so I think it's going to be interesting to see what comes up out of it. I think our country will be kind of in turmoil for a while. But that's good. I mean, from the chaos, we will grow into something else.
Good. Good thoughts to start us off.
My thoughts are even more far out than that, if people consider that far out. And that is that that Hillary is going to probably win this election, and she's going to be in a place where her authentic self, her divine feminine, is going to come out, and I'm hopeful that that will help this country turn around, or the perception about this country turn around. And to use your terms about the window washer, of course, this is about the shadow on both sides, the male and the female side. So in looking at this, what I was all about was, I just didn't want to participate in all this blah, blah, blah about the political situation. But I was really looking inside of myself to see if I could connect to Hillary and Trump as being one with me. As some of the people in this room know, I'm all about removing the illusion of separation, about our oneness. So. But I have to admit, Trump was a tough one for me. Because, you see, I grew up by the river of Hudson River. And I know about the New York culture. And Trump and I were both Leos. We were just born a few years apart. So I was really kind of tuning into you know, when I call him an asshole, I'm really looking back at myself also, you know, because I can definitely see in him things that I had to look at and transform within myself, the whole.
Good thoughts.
Well, I'd like to go back to the window washer, um, because I have often looked at window washers in New York City, way up there. And of course, you get this sinking feeling in your stomach about how it feels to be up there. And wonder whether those guys up there are at all bothered by it, which they usually aren't. But obviously from this dream, Trump was bothered by the heights that he found himself in. And responded in a very Trump-like manner of just falling down, going unconscious. And so, and they were, and then, but the other part of being the window washer is that you see the world from very far away. You see, people look like ants. You see the big picture, but you don't see the small picture. When you get down to the bottom, you see the small picture, but the big picture disappears. And that is certainly something that is, I think, a central issue in this kind of two-party positive, negative, up or down, either or kind of choice that you have in politics today, as you have it, as we have it in all the major operating systems that run our lives right now. The legal profession is an adversarial one. Someone wins, someone loses. Same as the political system. The business system is very much of an adversarial system. So this is the world that we live in right now, and politics are just a piece. The way we do politics is like the way we do everything right now. And it's going to take some real changes. And where that's going to come in first, I don't know. I mean, I don't know myself. I know that I'm with a lot of background in things like election law. So I understand what you have to do to allow multi-parties. I mean, I could sit down and write it on a piece of paper. This is what you have to do. And I know it's extremely difficult to make that kind of a jump. But I was very encouraged by Mike's message that this might open us up, perhaps, to the ways that we can open up all the systems that we live under right now, of which politics is just one, although a characteristic one.
Good thoughts, very good thoughts, thank you. Okay, we'll go here and
I'm sorry. You said that, 'cause as the window washer, I wouldn't want to mistakenly just kick Trump off the scaffold, because you might hurt people down below. All right. But thanks for the, bringing that up, so I can have that fun. Funny. I don't think he'd fly, so might not work. As a window washer, I love that, and that's what my life has been this year. I've been the window washer, because in order to do a good job, you really have to focus and get that glass nice and clear and not let it, streak or things happen to it. Make sure you get all the corners all the way around, and do it effectively, efficiently, and then move to the next one, you know. You've probably seen the view before. You probably know that you're way up in the air, but so what? The important thing is you focus on what you're doing. And this year has been an incredible year for me to focus on what I'm doing and not listen to any particular political party or energy coming that way, or even when people talk about it. And like somebody here asked me, you're here, it's about politics. Thanks, Marty. Why am I showing up when the subject is politics? Because that's not where my focus is. But it's great. I love that. I love being in this. Honoring that emptiness, which is everything. And what comes up as the window washer is what's important. Not what all this chatter is about, you know. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Great place to be.
Mm-hmm.
Who would like
Thank
to
you.
share that?
Thank you, we're gonna go here. I wanna remind, we're gonna go here and then. Okay. Thank you.
One of the things I love is context, frameworks, paradigms,
Mhm.
ways of seeing, because I've learned that when I shift my context, what is the content, what happens in my life shifts, just by my interpreting it differently, holding different points of view. And one of the contexts I have regarding what's going on in this country and this election, I call it the last call. Like when you're about ready to close up the bar, you have last call, get all your drinks in before you leave. And that the insanity, absurdity, the bizarreness, the purging of the shadow, the covert into overt, that I see happening epitomized in Trump on that side and Hillary on the other, is a signpost to me, an indicator that it's last call, because things are not going to be the same after this. It's like, let's get in as much craziness as you can, because it's not going to be available once the heart opens.
Yay.
Once we shift out of that either or 3D polarity-based paradigm, which we've been shifting, this to me is one of the indicators that potentially, depending on what actually happens, there's a lot of internet and internet chatter about whether this election will even happen, because of what is behind this that is wanting to be expressed, wants to come out and be seen. So we'll find out in 2 weeks or so whether this this shift, this domino that is tipping, is going to be a significant one, not just a minor piece, but a major shift in the context of what if there's no election? What if that has been, that whole way, those two candidates are not going to be on the docket, and something else is coming up. Something that I'm sensing is much more from the heart, much more what they're calling the 4D integrative, both and more opportunity to live and remember who we are. So from the window washers, seeing that context in this watching, okay, if it's not this, it'll be something else, because the cycle is happening. It's not just on this planet, it's not just on this nation. For me, it's in the solar system, it's on the galaxy. I mean, I live in all those realms that I like to play in. So I've just been going, you go guys, because to me Trump has been a major catalyst for bringing out the shadow that has been just festering in our culture, in our being. Same thing with Hillary. The background I know about her, it's just amazing what she represents. So I'm grateful to both of them because they're taking on a very heavy lifting load to present themselves in that way, and for us to dance with that. So, last call. Oh.
Thank you for enabling me to hear the various sides of myself. I'm just going to preface this by saying that I've been working on a couple of books for the last 4 years now. The one I'm going to speak to a little bit today, I just changed the title. It used to be Evolving Truly Conscious Self-Governance Worldwide, and now it's Hearting Towards Truly Conscious Self-Governance Worldwide. And what I'm seeing in terms of the idea of a death of politics, part of what the Founding Fathers warned about when they drew up the Constitution, as I understand it, was the idea of dictatorship of the masses. You know, that, and what I see being reflected in both parties, and it has been getting worse in terms of the political divide, this compulsive, lower conscious shadow, if you like, need to try to control each other. It's like, how come the Democrats feel like they got to control all the Republicans and make them into Democrats? How come the Republicans keep feeling like, no, we have to all be Republicans? And my feeling is that it's time to transcend either or. It's time to, get into a deeper level of somehow using this dialogue process to really hear and respect each other. Because part of what came out of, for me, what really came to the surface out of the last dialogue circle was the idea that when we go to our authenticity, we are different, and it's wonderful that we're different. In a sense, that's how oneness gets to know of itself, by allowing us to play our differences. So what I'm seeing in envisioning actually is a call for a no-party party. No parties. Because parties always argue that I have the right way and you have the wrong way. So what I'm actually seeing in this hearting towards truly conscious self-governance, I'm seeing this model of the talking staff. Years ago, Margaret Mead and other anthropologists studying Southeast Asia, they noticed that whenever a village grew over 2,500 people, it was important for a certain group of that community to break off and form a new village. Because, why did they do that? This is the same thing you could say happens in the jungles of our world, and in all primitive cultures. Why did they do that? Because with 2,500 people or less, we can actually get to know each other. When you go beyond that, it becomes an abstraction. It's like somebody way up near the top of the cleaning the windows ladder, is so abstracted, as you pointed to, so abstracted out of who the villages of we the people are, that they no longer can see or hear or listen. So what I'm seeing is the possibility of creating a democracy that is regrounded in grassroots-sized villages, okay? Where villages use talking stick circles, where we have a town hall, and everybody can come and speak. Once a week, there's an open circle dialogue. Certain people asked to be in the center part, certain people asked to be in the periphery, and we talk to each other, we listen, we hear what we want at the village-sized level. So I'm seeing the possibility of putting the electoral process, not from the top down, okay, but from the grassroots villages up. So each villages, through the talking stick dialogue, would elect a council of 50 people to help, because we would say, wow, these are the 50 people that we trust the most, who have our best interests at heart, and we've gotten to know who those people are. So we put those people in charge of doing their best to facilitate prosperity and abundance and wholeness for the whole village. And then, from each village, villages can elect at the next level, say 30, 40, 50 villages now elect another council upward, who now work with villages who would band together to at the next level. And part of what I'm seeing in terms of rooting our democracy back in the village is that I have no problem with diversity. If some group of villages want to live as far to the left or as far to the right as they want, go for it. My only qualifier is that we need yet another constitutional, in a sense, inalienable, guaranteed right. And that's the right to non-harmful diversity. Okay? So that these 20 villages, 30 villages want to live way to the right, go for it. You just can't force yourself on the other 20 villages who want to live to the left, or who want to live in the center, or who want to invent new ways of living. So that's my initiating few comments in relation to your wonderful, wonderful challenge to us all.
Thank you. Pass the talking steps 3 to the left. But before you speak, I'm going to just add another thing to the soup. But that's really great start. Thank you very much. We've been the window washer, and we're imagining, how we can see more clearly the nation, the United States as a nation, and perhaps how we can see ourselves more clearly. That's the question. But thank you for bringing up the local level. What I want to add to the soup is I want you to consider how politics is actually not restricted to politicians, but how politics manifests in our everyday life, in our village, in whatever we have created as our community, whether it's the IONS community, whether it's the, whatever community, the people of like-minded people you tend to hang with, So I want you to look at that as well, and go ahead. Thank you. So.
Well, this is getting to be a very interesting flow this time again.
Mm-hmm.
When you asked the question, the term contentiousness came to my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I have been wondering if this could be the end of contentiousness.
Mm-hmm.
That we have seen these two people so contentious with each other, both talking at the same time, trying to overrule what the other one is saying. And I don't think it can get any worse than that in terms of how people communicate with each other. And so the world is seeing this. And I found it fascinating. I mean, I had to watch all those 3 debates. Maybe it's time for it to be over. I mean, we know that there is a shift that's happening. And for people to see that so clearly, that contentiousness, that anger, these insults, maybe it's time for it to end.
Mm-hmm.
I hope it is.
Mhm. Thank you to Elizabeth.
When I was up there in your description of the window washer on the scaffold, what was most interesting to me was peering inside to see what was going on in the room behind me. And there's several things that occurred to me that the whole dance that's being danced out is got the hand of the implicit order on it as part of the necessity of the spiral of evolution. One of the things that feels really important is the shadow, but beyond that is pathology. And I was so heartened to see that there's a paper from a group of psychologists who have looked at pathological narcissism and traced it where it goes, which is to fascism. And we got a little club of 80-year-olds here now. Hallelujah. I grew up in the time of Hitler. And there's a stench about that fascist vibration that I wish more was being clarified about both the pathology and the pathological form it takes in the political fascism. Another thing that I see when I peer in the window is what a gift Trump has given us in the direction that sexual assault will never be under the floorboards again. It is out there. And it is going to stay out there. That's a whole level of just sweeping, not just this country, but the whole globe, about that kind of sotto voce treatment of women. And there's something here about, and we started talking about it, I think, in our last dialogue. And I think that that it's really important in this situation. And it kind of connects with what you were bringing up about the whole, one of the transitions that's happening is being put right out there in this culture by Hillary in a unique way. Angela Merkel didn't have to go through this stuff. The woman who was head of India did not have to go through this stuff. Thatcher didn't have to go through this stuff. So it's a special thing that is a gift to the collective consciousness from our experience. And Hillary and I grew up in the same neighborhood, outside Chicago, on the suburbs, edges of Chicago. And I know a lot about, our churches were next door to each other. She was a Methodist, we were Episcopalians. And we were surrounded by the kind of polite, middle class Republicans that she came from. I know what that feels like because we were the oddballs in town. And my brother and I, my father got to know the neighbors pretty well because my brother and I took chalk, and when they put up their Wilkie or whoever it was, posters in their windows, my brother and I went around and wrote "fuck Wilkie" on the sidewalk. My father had to go around and apologize. And he had a really hard time spanking us about it because he agreed with us totally. Not the way to express it. But that thing of, for me as a girl, and the things that I hear about Hillary, how she began to see the light a little by little, by having her pastor take the teenage kids down to hear Martin Luther King in Chicago, and little by little how she made how she came out of that into a much more humane point of view. But being slapped down at every step. And I know what that feels like, because I went through the same kind of thing, of having something to say, and because I saw how boys did it. You just get up and you say what you have to say. What? No, you don't. That's not for girls. So I have a certain sympathy for what she has been able to figure out and negotiate all the way along, and how her manner might incite threat to an old form of understanding of what it is to be a man. And I really have this question for all of us, because it's very present in this situation of making room for her to preside as president as a woman without having to be a man, or not having to do it the way men do it, which is it's fine for men. But I have this question, guys. There's so many subtleties about this shift to recognizing and honoring and accommodating vision and power the way it comes through women.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not talking about the divine feminine, I'm talking about women. Presumably we represent, but I really have concern for men and for the teaching of boys to be able to be comfortable in your maleness and your masculinity and your way of doing things in a male way without being, with making space for that women are likely doing it in different ways. So I have that question, and I think I could stop there.
Beautiful. Okay, over here. Come straight across. And, thank you. Good thoughts. Beautiful thoughts. Thank you.
I may come from a even further, sorry, from a either even further perspective, or I see and understand and relate to what everyone has said. Absolutely everything in the shadow and the female and the masculine. And that I feel like this situation, I have not been in politics for about 12 years. So I'm not into the debates, I'm not following what's going on in that, but whatever I need to hear, I trust I will hear. And so that's how I've gotten my information as far as what's going on in the debates and so on and so forth. I believe it brings up the question of, is it a good thing to have our power outside of ourselves? Because systematically we've been conditioned to look to this governmental system as the answer, the waymaker, the savior, if you will. And with that, we as individuals give our power away. And those of us that are conscious, because obviously there's many on the planet that are not really conscious, and so they're just going along. But for those of us who are conscious, I feel that it begs the question, is this good? And do we need to return to realizing our own power and walking in that power and encouraging each other in the same? I feel like it also raises the question of, and brings attention to the problem of the polarity of masculine and feminine. When all of us are both. All of us are both. We've been systematically, again, conditioned, we've been bottle fed that if you're male, this is your characteristic. This is the way that you need to function and operate through life. If you're a female, these are the characteristics that you need to take on. These are the way that you need to operate, relate to, and view life. And I don't believe that that's necessarily so. We're individuals before our gender. And so, with that being said, I feel that, again, this is a reminder, or in a different way, that this is a reminder to return to our true selves. And to return to looking at others as their true selves. It has nothing to do with your travel suit. It has nothing to do with your genitalia. I mean, really? That's who we are? That's what we reduce ourselves down to? Really? So I feel like, again, that it's a reminder that we should flow through our hearts as who we are, and all of this superficial way of relating to life, viewing life, carrying on our maleness or femaleness, that's all irrelevant when it really comes down to it. I feel like it's really, really all irrelevant. And the important thing, again, is to return to our true selves and function through life in that way. Because when we fail to do that, we're perpetuating the same conditioning that has us where we are today. So we need to be freed up from these things. And again, all of us that are conscious, and obviously there's a lot more than us here in this room, as the walls come down in our own lives, we help to free humanity in the same way. Another reflection as far as looking out of the window into what's kind of going on, it brings to my realization, or emphasizes more, the fact that all of these ways of separateness, all of these ways of separatism are not beneficial. We say my country, but we're humanity. We're of the earth. It doesn't matter if someone's from Asia or Africa or New Zealand or the US, what's been called the US, it's land. It's all land. We all have the same elements. I mean, we have earth, we have fire, we have water, we have, all of these different things, and things have been named different things, and that, again, and the male-female is another expression of that. But I feel that it's very important, and this is to bring to our awareness that the problem with separatism, the problem with working in or walking through life in that way, with that perception, with that perspective, and just, I'm drawn to people by their hearts. It doesn't matter the package that one shows up in. It has nothing to do with the package. Nothing at all. Whether it's race, whether it's age, whether it's region, whether it's language. I mean, we may not speak the same language, but somehow we can understand and relate one another because it's a connection at the heart level. So that's what I feel like a lot of this is all about.
Okay, we're gonna go over here, then back here. Just here. Thank you. Thank you for those thoughts, thank you. Excellent.
To tie into this idea of separateness, because it looks to me that it has been building up to a climax over the years of being separate, arguing, not listening to each other. So this is kind of an extreme case, and then we are talking about that we are all one. We should see ourselves in the other. Well, we seem to be getting further and further away from that. And in the beginning, I didn't know what did you mean by this dream. I had to think of the window washer, and then I came up for me this idea that here was I forgot his name.
Trump.
Trump.
Walking.
So he is way up there, right? And he is cleaning the windows, kind of cleaning his because we all have our blinders on, right? So he's cleaning, it's higher and higher, and he's cleaning all these misperceptions that he has. And he gets nearly to the top, and then he looks down and he sees, we're all one. And that overwhelms him, even him. And he falls down, he cannot take that, that we're all one. That's so comfortable. He sees the truth of that. Even he can see that. Everyone. We can all see it, I guess, if we really want to. So then the people around him, of course, say, this is very dangerous. You better take it now, because before we know it, he really brings it back to the earth, that we're all one, and he kind of starts a whole new, so there's hope.
Thank you. Thank you for those thoughts. Over here, thank you.
A few minutes ago, just thinking about Trump, I had this image of one of these big black clouds you see before a storm, and all kinds of lightning going on inside of it. It's just rumbling. And I say, what's caused that is that this differential between the energy of the earth and in the sky. There's a tension that's built up, and it has to release. But, I think it's the inequity in society between. I think America we seem to have plenty, but we actually a great many people operate on the basis of lack. We're always trying to get more wealth, more power, and every time people pursue that, they're taking some away from other people. There's a whole group of people that Trump represents, which could be the potential for fascism, who feel that they've been unseen. They haven't been given the opportunity to have power
opportunity to manifest themselves fully. So that they're in an extreme condition of lack. And so what we need to do a lot is to look at the people who are in a condition of lack and see what we can share with them, how we can give up some of our excess, our plenty. The other image that came up for me is window washing. Just yesterday I was thinking that there's two things domestically that I can't stand, and it's dishwashing and window washing. And I'm really pathetically horrible at washing windows. And I was thinking part of my problem probably is that I'm looking at the fly specks in the dirt and they just don't come off completely in the nose. And I'm failing to look through the window and see this gorgeous landscape that we have around our house out away from town. And if I was focusing on that more and then liberating that beauty by getting off 200 more fly specks off that pane, then suddenly window washing would become maybe at least tolerable, if not pleasurable. So.
Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna introduce one more thing into the soup, then we'll give you a chance. Beautiful. We're just warming up. We could go for days, I think. There's so much here, and thank you for picking up, a lot of you, on the window washer and addressing that. That's what I asked you to do. Thank you for doing that. The window washer who is on the scaffolding is not looking at Central Park, normally. Looking inside the building. Looking inside the building. So one of the things that's been very interesting, it seems to me, about Trump is that he is not an insider, but he has a clear view of the inside. He has, through giving donations, had the ability to hang with certain politicians who are in the inside. So there he is. It seems like he is this blessing, sometimes a painful blessing, but no pun intended to the window washer. It's a very painful job. but
I just got it.
Trump and this entire election has brought out things, as we've been saying here, things that have not been discussed openly ever before. So one of the things I want to ask you to address now really is specifically it's been touched upon, but specifically the styles of masculine and feminine leadership. Because we have before us this election where we have, to some degree, an exaggeration of a almost father knows best figure, perhaps going amok, but a father, this is the father figure as authoritarian who knows what needs to be done. I can fix this, and this is contrasted with it may be a slogan, Hillary, stronger together, but it is a good contrast in her slogan. But really what it seems to me, it is a little bit more of the mommy energy of the practical getting things done, but not necessarily drawing attention to ourselves. So what is going on here, and how does that affect us in our lives? How does that make us reevaluate how this society is running? And if we want, how our little villages are running, or take it to the personal within ourselves, how is this opening our own heart? So this is a wide open question. So, there you have it. I want you to address that masculine-feminine dynamic. And part of the reason I want you to do this is because it seems to me that political parties are dance partners. It was said, they may say that our way is right. But in fact, they're dance partners like women and men. And they're always reacting to what the other side does, and then they're upsetting the balance, and then they're resetting the balance. So how is that manifesting in our lives? Okay. Do you want to come into the circle?
Oh, no, I can just stand over there. I wanted to address what you said also, I don't know your name. Katrina. Was absolutely beautiful. What I have seen is everything that Hillary or Trump is saying, doing, and showing you their human characteristics, and the dance, and we laugh at it, you know, and as if we're above it sometimes. Instead of, to me, this is what you talked about, the greatest time to take in things we don't want to take in. How much we are like them, because we're human just like they are. How would we do in a cat fight? When you know, like, we've all been there. We've all done that. But instead of laughing and giggling and moving away from that, there is no separateness. That I feel if we take those things that are being touched upon inside us and really transform individually our own inner world, really go there, that's the shift. And when it's painful, you know, like even the thing with men in locker room talk, it's everywhere. Have you ever seen what I wanted to get on the TV and say, have you ever seen women at a strip club with men? It's no different. It's like there's all different areas of us. We can all get down there, go to the lowest denominator. But if we were to transform those human characteristics, because if you see it in when they're talking and it hits you somehow, then it's in you. There is no other way. That's what everybody's talking about, but it's really in us. And I think that if we want to take the next step up that you talked about, it's about the more your flame can burn through all this in the next 2 weeks, the more that person can rise to the occasion. They can't if we're not there. Because they're going to be leading. But they're only leading our thoughts, our feelings. Because we're the most powerful. There's more of us than there is of those two. I just feel like when you say bring back the power, we have the power, but we have to be willing to transform inside ourselves. And I hope.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to throw out one more question for the soup then. Okay. Okay. Now, this is really good. Something's coming out where we're discussing what is happening in society, and we're connecting it to what we can do individually, emotionally, spiritually. That's very good. And we're connecting it back to our political leaders, but we're looking at it how it affects us. So I want you to imagine that you have the benefit of meeting somebody from 500 years in the future, a time traveler. Okay, a time traveler comes. And the time traveler has been given a special assignment to assess human society at this time. And the time traveler asks you, or says to you, in my land, we don't ever speak about this concept of leadership. But I see it's in all your newspapers and your magazines and your television shows. So I want you to explain to me, what is leadership? What is this thing? What is it? Why do you need it? That's your question. Okay, Joseph.
So since I had the privilege of working with Stephen Covey back in the 90s when he talked about leadership, what Stephen was trying to communicate in his books was first and foremost about personal leadership. It was about personal leadership. It was about, our own kind of the way we saw the world and the way we took on the habits to be effective. So, as a the way I would talk to the time traveler and say what this leadership is about is, it's really about our own internal transformation first that reflects out to the collective consciousness, the changes that we need to make in at that time period in our human realm, in our human evolution, and that and again, I'm being hopeful that this person Hillary, who kind of showed up and showed up in this leadership role after doing her own internal work, showed up in this leadership role where she would, get people to collaborate and talk and come up with a new way of seeing the world, and that she was instrumental in changing changing this beautiful country of the United States that I'm very proud of being part of, even though I see it from a global standpoint. But that that this country was a leader in this evolutionary consciousness, and brought it together and made it happen. I hope.
Did you?
Well, this actually opens a piece that I forgot, so it wasn't time. To me, leadership is just the inevitable result of lack of self-regulation. In other words, if you don't know how to guide your own life from your heart, from the soul, from your calling, whoever you really are, you're going to be in a vacuum where someone's going to step in and tell you what to do. And there's different levels of leadership like that. Some of it may be benevolent, but I see that the more laws that are enacted to regulate behavior, to tell you how you have to behave, means there's a less internal guidance. That means I'm going to be a kind person because my heart's open and connected. I'm a kind person. I treat people fairly. If that's not open, and that's not available as a resource, someone else is going to come here and tell you, well, you can't do that, or you should do this. So I would say to that traveler, yeah, damn straight, I'm with you, take me back, because I'm not interested in a world of leadership.
You're not interested in...
I'm not interested in being in a culture that requires external guidance. through legislation predominantly, since the political realm is a law-making entity. They're constantly passing laws of how things are supposed to be. So the more laws, less civilized the culture is, in my mind. Less conscious, less heartfelt. Now, I'm okay because on one level because that's the way this is. This is the game as it's being played. And on the evolutionary side of it, here is the transitioning from the external reliance on security. The government's supposed to make you feel safe. Bullshit. No government isn't responsible for my safety. No. So, the more externalized, the more control and domination, the more enslavement. My experience has been in that. The more internal resourced I am, the more awakened who I am, who I know that I live through that connection and that inciting and inspiration that comes from a clear, open, integrated human being. Where's politics going? Eventually there is going to be no government like that. Not centralized. It will be localized, starting from here. And then how do I contribute? How do I interact? How do I support and be supported by like individuals who are also coming from the soul source of their being, from their heart. And then we won't manifest, or need to manifest, external institutions that are supposed to take care of you. That to me is just what happens in a third dimensional unconscious control and domination game. And so, like you were saying, what emerges? That's what I really wanted. If politics is ending as we know, what emerges out of the ashes? This is what I see emerging. Eventually, more and more people are saying, none of the above. I don't even want to play. Let's go over and have a good time together. Oh.
To Elizabeth, okay, and then we'll work our way down back to Linda.
I certainly agree with the voices that have said it starts in here. And I'm committed to the unfolding from in here. But I'm very grateful for the teachers who are one kind of leaders, who have helped me by voicing, giving voice to something that resides in here that I could recognize. And what I think, what leadership, the first thing is you were setting that up, that the leadership that I respect is leadership that has certain qualities that perhaps I don't have or want, but embodies and voices this knowing that I have from within, and is willing to carry it out into a wider circle. Noetic science is a leader in self-inner knowing. We would not be here if we did not have the leadership of Noetic science. This circle would not be sitting here. And I'm very grateful for this community. And what I see actually happening out there is we have to have some way to accommodate all of those who haven't gotten to a stage of opening and claiming our own consciousness and self-knowledge and autonomy, who are seeing things in, well, how can I say, in a perhaps more mundane terms. I don't have a job. My job went overseas. You say you're going to bring my job back. I'm going with you. It's very rudimentary.
Mm-hmm.
And it has bothered me all the way along that the truth about the takeover of automation, which is really eliminating the jobs, is not being spoken to these people. Their jobs will never come back. So leaders arise who are giving voice to something that a whole bunch of other people are feeling and are not given to vocalizing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not, I don't see it as a lack of authenticity or centeredness in myself that I would respect a leader who would be able to take those same knowings and share them in a wider circle than I could. Maybe that's the end of that.
Mm-hmm. Pass it on down to, I think Dave was next. Yeah.
I never considered myself to have leadership qualities. And I read something once about leadership from up above, which I've worked in not many corporations, a few corporations. I understand that. Leadership from above. But I read something about leadership from behind. And I thought, wow, that matches my style, my personality, my type. So what that's about is leadership from behind is being able to perceive and asking and getting into, what do you think has to be done? What would be important? Listening and asking the right questions to the point where people are energized because they see something where they can, a little crack where they can give their gift. So you never know. But to stay empty and to stay in communication and to be, feel that connectedness and where those energetics are coming from, and then work in this circle of a community of love. That's what's been happening with me. And I'm having a ball. I guess you call it leadership.
Pass it down over here.
Well, I think the first thing that I would do when I met that traveler from 500 years in the future is I would say, let's have a lesson. Let's find out. Do you still have genders? Good question. Maybe they don't. What's different about the world that you inhabit normally and what you see here? I think it would be a very useful thing to learn. Unfortunately, we do live now. We don't live 500 years from now. And so, in questions of leadership, for instance, and I think that when you see Hillary and you see the Donald up there, you see two different extremes of leadership style. And the Donald is like the daddy gone completely haywire. He's going to fix everything for everybody. And you realize that under it, there is no competence, so he can't do it. But what he's putting out is this daddy can fix it message. And this means if daddy's gonna do it, you don't have to. It's not about asking you what you can do, as JFK did. Don't ask what the government can do for you. Ask what you can do for the government. But he's not that person. Hillary, to me, is closer to my idea of the way I think leadership should be in the world we live in today. I think that it should be with more of a servant idea, that the leader is the servant of the people. And this reaches back to the people. You know, if the leader is the servant of the people, then the leader has to know what the people want. And has to, and is obligated to pay attention to that. And that, to me, is a much more in the spirit of being guided by the larger voices and not by, it's not bottom up, it's not top down. And that's a very important thing, and I think it's really, it's definitely right out there front and center in this particular contest. And as many people have said here, this is what's important about this contest, is that people are not coming out with their nice faces on. This is a totally different thing. And and it's good. It reminds us about who we are too. And so that's the question about leadership. And I do think that I have to also add that I think that leadership of men, most leadership in the world, that is, in solving problems outside of your immediate circle, most of that leadership has been the leadership of men over the last 4 or 5 millennia, as far as we know. And women have been the guardians of the home and the hearth and the inner. This doesn't mean that women don't have some skills to do outside things, or that men don't have some skills to do inside things, but that is how it has been divided. And this particular election really dramatizes that very, very well. We feel it all the time. Thanks.
Okay, before I go back to Lynn, one last question to throw for your consideration into the soup is how can we water the seeds that we want to see manifest? You know, so that's within ourselves, within our leaders, within our country, and within our land. Then that's the last question, because really our overarching theme, you know, is this is the death of politics, what is emerging. So I want you to focus on what is emerging, but in the way of how do we water those seeds to have that manifest? How do we support the leaders who are there, whether political leaders or leaders in our community? How do we do that?
Thank you.
I feel totally ready for that.
You ready?
First thing I'd like to point to is, we're all familiar with the idea of revolution. And one of the dangers in terms of the excitement of what's happening is that there is that sort of core base of frustrated people who in a lot of ways would, and remember, they're the ones with all the guns, who would like us to go backward. Okay? We've also heard quite a few people mention the idea of evolution, and the idea that, you know, we're on the verge of an evolution in consciousness. What I'd like to throw into the mix, because I've been playing with this word a lot, and the richness of it is deepening within me, is the idea of involution. And involution has to do with us taking our power, our responsibility, our empowerment back, or, you know, that we, in a sense, it's us giving it up. So, and we're the ones who really have it. And what I love about this talking staff circle way of communicating is that it's asking us to go inward and to involute what we feel, what we sense. It's asking us to bring out our deepest wisdom with each other, and to talk to, you know, in the most coming from the East, you know, coming from the big spirit space. It's giving us the opportunity to share ever more deeply as we learn about this process together. And what I would say, as we really take this in and bring it out, it's out of this that a new sense of who we want to lead us will emerge. It's by us involuting as a way of evolving that we will spontaneously, out of the depths of our souls, will emerge this new thing we're looking for. So, I mean, I'm totally behind you with this, man, this process. It's time. I mean, the founding fathers actually knew of the Iroquois way of the talking stick, and they integrated it. But somehow, over the years, this ability to really hear each other has been lost. And I feel this is what we need to involve.
Okay.
Listening, taking notes and thinking, it's all, most everyone has right thoughts, and it's, I agree with almost all of it. I think we do need leadership. Every organization I know fails if it doesn't have leadership, and if it doesn't have good leadership. I think the gorilla in this room, in this system, in this time, has been corruption. I think we had a good man. Bernie Sanders was a person we looked to and said, there's an honest man. There's a fairly honest man. He said the same thing for years. He doesn't have a lot of baggage he's carrying. But in the system that we were working through, corruption reared its ugly head, and he wasn't allowed, not because people didn't want him, but because we allowed corruption in the system. So I'm not sure that things are going to change until we elect incorruption, until we demand incorruption of our leaders, whether it's at the DNC level or presidents. I think we're paying the price of corruption here by having clowns that are running instead of someone that had my vote. As far as men and women, I just had a little quip, and I think everyone's heard it, but it's always been said, doesn't have to be this way, there's exceptions, but man rules the world, but woman rules the man. And I think it's pretty important to realize that even when a man's in charge, he probably has a woman somewhere that's keeping him where he needs to be. So, but in some cases, woman is, I look at Margaret Thatcher as having probably been a good example of a strong woman that she may not have been everything I agree with. But, so it happens, but oftentimes, even though a man's in charge, that doesn't mean a man's really in charge.
I can recognize about 3 more people.
Can you repeat what you just threw in the soup, the last?
The last one is how can we water the seeds we want to see manifest? So in our leaders, or in ourselves, or in the society, in the country and in the land.
I'd like to say firstly that I'm very much a visionary. And so I see where we are today, but I envision. So I'm not saying, and I'm not coming from a place of just eliminate leadership. You know, that's not my message. That's not what I was communicating or intending to communicate. But again, with the futuristic view of returning to our own power. And then I see, you know, in conjunction with what you shared, with it being more of a village type setup, I guess. But in regards to watering, again, it goes back to the individual, I feel. And letting the walls within our own minds, within our own hearts, to come down. We cross paths with people all the time, whether we know them or whether we don't. And each of those connections is an opportunity to see beyond our limited perspective, our limited interaction. And I feel that that's where it starts. I feel like backing things that we do support. And like you said, the Noetic leadership here. We should support the things that are effective, that are beneficial. And I feel like that makes more space for organizations and for groups like that to come about. Yeah. I think that's
My teacher.
Because I think that's so much stronger in gender issues and what we do here. How do we resolve these differences? I frequently quote Bearhart, my teacher, "Peace is not the absence of conflict, but the resolution of conflict with love." How can we come together with something? We may not agree, and we have different backgrounds. You say something, I say something, let's figure out how we're going to do this. So we have these opportunities to move forward into something that is what we dream about, from the heart, but it includes the head. I mean, we want to integrate this. It's about integrating the head and the heart, in my opinion, and about masculine, feminine individuals and talking about it.
Very good.
I'll just be quick. What I'm taking from this is, on a personal level, is just going home and shifting my perspective about being in a person who doesn't quite have enough of whatever it might be. And looking at myself as a person who's actually living in considerable abundance, and therefore being able to give much more to my family, my kids, friends, whatever it is. And stop going around me with the 20% grinchiness.
Richiness, I never heard that.
I want to put in a word for looking around, because the seeds are being watered. And stuff is filtering into the body politics, so to speak. There's a whole, one I happen to especially like is the Compassionate Incarceration Project in the Los Angeles prison system. Hello. This is carrying so much of, it's an example of carrying a responsibility for how these people got there is partly the fault of the lacks in the culture, in the social systems. That's how they didn't have what they needed, so they ended up there. So how do we get them, how do we get to them and work with them, including setting up schools so that they can learn to read and write. And they even have projects in the East now where you can get a master's degree in prison. So that when you come out, you've got something that you can parlay to make a life. So I'm just noticing places in the culture where together, what is it, stronger together, where it's actually happening. So that thing of the conversation, get the conversation going and find out where can we meet, how can we meet. It's not a dead zone.
Thank you. Anybody have some last second passionate thoughts they haven't expressed?
I don't really know how to phrase it because
Maybe
I'm
you
not
do.
with your group.
You do fine.
So I've not been to a group before. Thank you for having me. I've been listening to how things were being phrased and didn't exactly know how to say this in a more positive way, but the thing that has dawned on me fairly recently with the notion that Hillary Clinton very much may be the next president of the United States and the first woman president in this country. And I'm a mother of boys and have the experience of being a woman and biased toward women and how that plays out depending on their experience. It could be a woman who is comfortable in her comfort zone and doesn't see all of the challenges and stresses of women, and as a result doesn't respect women's roles as leaders because of their own experience. I know at my boys, I could say one thing and they will shut down on me because it's the mom voice. And I've seen that happen with men, grown men. They don't even know they're doing it. It's a reaction to their experience as children. And so I think some of the things that are happening to Hillary, and I'm not affected, like I was a Bernie, I was excited beyond belief with Bernie because of his truthfulness. And I didn't see that in the other candidates. But as my concern is looking at what has happened with Barack Obama and the fact that he has not been given respect and support for 8 years. That's a long time to hold our country hostage by a fairly small group of people, not a large group. And so my concern is how we are going to go forward as supporting this woman with those biases that exist in our culture, and how are we going to get past? It's a big jump. It's a big move for us to get past female biases apparently in this country. And I wanted to have a solution, but my question is, I feel like we've just got to be really strong as men and women to get behind that so that we don't have another stalemate for 4 years or 8 years. When you can stand and stop the justice system from being placed and not do your job and be a fairly small population, we've got to have a lot of strength to get this country moving. Spending 2 years on an election process and the money that is spent on that election process, what a waste. What a waste of time that is for our country, for all of us that have sat and watched it, for them. You know, I don't know how we get anything done, honestly, with these. So, you know, I'd love to see election reform, but I am very concerned and hopeful. But I think we're going to have to be super strong if she, in her election, and not if she's, I really think she will be elected. I think there's going to have to be some very big changing of attitude and how you follow this new leader so that progress can be made and support for our society can be made.
Thank you. Anybody else want a passionate last second?
I guess I have one more thought, and that is that whole presidency thing all set up as hiring a superhero. And we need to understand everybody's so imperfect. If I've never been in jail, but my life itself, if somebody would take a magnifying glass on me, like they do on Hillary or Donald, I wouldn't be able to stand up under it either, and probably very few of us would. As soon as they look at one little thing we put on Facebook or this or that, and it's going to be more of that coming. But the whole job is structured in such a way that it needs to be downplayed, and the whole White House concept, the royalty, all the pomp and circumstance of the presidency, that probably just leads into corruption, leads into making it too big of a prize. And I think the Canadian system, I lived in Canada for a while, and other places have it more in line where you're really voting for a platform, you're voting for a concept, and then the person at the head of that concept happens to be the leader, and much less on personalities and how they comb their hair than it is about whether or not they say this should happen.
Okay, thank you. All right, I think I'm going to make some closing comments. And then, first of all, thank you very much. It's a blessing to be able to facilitate a dialogue and to be fed by what is shared. Thank you very much for your wisdom. Thank you for your good, deep, beautiful thoughts. Thank you, each and every one of you. Thank you. Thank you. A dialogue circle is something that, as we said in the beginning, does not have an agenda or an expectation of a result. We're not going to form a committee. We're not going to form a phone tree and start calling or something, you know, or try to get Bernie Sanders in or something. You know, we're not going to do any of that. But what we are going to do, hopefully, is take these thoughts as seeds within us, and the ones that are supposed to blossom can. So thank you for that. I do find it, I want to say something about this nation founding, because we got there in our discussions. It's true, as was brought out, that the founding fathers were influenced by Native Americans living on this land. They were particularly influenced by the Iroquois Confederacy, and there were a lot of that philosophy made its way into our very basic symbolism, like the dollar bill that has the eagle that's holding the 13 within your talons, the 13 arrows comes from the Iroquois. Similar symbol with holding 6, because they had a nation of 6. So that did make its way into our Articles of Confederation. It did make its way into our Constitution eventually. But what didn't make its way into the founding of the United States was the women's circles. So if they had looked at the Iroquois Confederacy and wished to take that in,
they would have brought a very little bit of a different system, because in my imagination, I imagine Ben Franklin, who hung out with the Iroquois a lot, sitting in a dialogue circle, which probably was a men's council, or certainly was a men's council, because that's what they did. They had a men's council, but that men's council met at the behest of the women's council, and the chief was appointed by the women's council and could be removed by the women's council. So this is part of one way of having a society, hopefully directing masculine divine energy in a good way, inspired by wisdom. That's something for your consideration. I think that we are living in a very special time, and because it's very, very easy to look at our leaders and to project upon them what we think is wrong. Very, very easy. And then we will be supporting ourselves. We'll be supporting the way that we interact as women and men in this culture. Because that is shifting. That is shifting too. And we've been able to bring a little bit out of that here. And thank you for that, all those beautiful thoughts. So thank you so much. It's a great blessing.
Thank you. And thank you to the elements
Thank you.
and to the one consciousness.
Thank you. I'd like to ask, actually, before we leave, please, Mike, would you mind saying a closing prayer for us?
But I want you to imagine in your own mind, what is it you're grateful for? This circle. People here, food. The freedom to be able to talk about this. So Creator, thank you for these. Opportunity to get together, the opportunity to eat meals and have good water. Opportunity to express ourselves in a loving way. We're moving towards a new paradigm, new relationships, Creator. Help us go there. Whatever it takes, help us go there. My teacher would say at the end of the prayers, "Thy will be done." So thy will be done. Oh.
Yes, and thank you. Thank you. Thank you.